Imagine a tiny black seed deciding whether you live or die. That is exactly what happened just a few hundred years ago. Today you ignore it. You shake it over your food without a second thought. But for 1,000 years, this seed started wars, built empires, and made men rich beyond imagination. This is the story of black pepper and why the world bled for it. On the tangled slopes of Kerala's Malabar coast, a vine winds its way toward history. Piper nigrum, the black pepper plant, has thrived here for over 3,000 years, its tiny berries destined to shape empires and rituals far beyond these monsoon-soaked forests. Ancient farmers learned to harvest the green drupes just as they ripened, then spread them on bamboo mats to dry beneath the tropical sun. The outer skin shrank and wrinkled, sealing in an intense, aromatic heat. That heat comes from piperine, an alkaloid that makes up nearly 1/10 the weight of a dried peppercorn. In kitchens without ice or cold cellars, piperine did more than tingle the tongue. It veiled the stench of meat gone sour, cloaking the scent of decay with a sharp, woody bite. Medieval cooks and doctors alike believed pepper could both awaken the appetite and protect the body from spoiled food, a faith repeated in medical texts from the Charaka Samhita in India to Galen's treatises in Rome. But pepper's power was not just practical, it became a symbol of status, a luxury reserved for the tables and tombs of the elite. Greek writers called it the king of spices. Egyptian embalmers, according to later legend, placed peppercorns in the nostrils of Ramesses II when he died in 1213 BC, a detail that survives more in myth than in any mummy's wrappings, yet speaks to the aura surrounding the spice. In truth, no funerary inventory from the Valley of the Kings lists pepper among the oils and resins, but the story lingers, echoing the reverence that pepper commanded in the ancient world. By the 1st century CE, pepper had traveled thousands of miles from Kerala to the storerooms of Rome. Pliny the Elder, writing in 77 CE, marveled at its price. A single pound could buy a slave. Roman merchants paid in gold, their ledgers recording shipments from the Indian coast to Alexandria and Ostia. While no surviving treasury list spells out pepper among the bullion and grain, funerary inscriptions and tribute records confirm that pepper was counted as tribute, a substance worthy of imperial storehouses and the envy of senators. In the kitchens of the wealthy, the Roman gourmet Apicius scattered pepper over everything from boiled fish to honeyed fruit, burning through fortunes to secure the spice's bite. Over centuries, pepper's sensory power, its heat, its aroma, its ability to mask and transform, fused with its scarcity to create a commodity as coveted as any precious metal. In the world before refrigeration, flavor was a shield against rot, and pepper was the sharpest blade. The journey of this berry from the humid forests of Kerala to the banqueting halls and burial chambers of the ancient world set the stage for its next incarnation, not just as a luxury, but as a form of wealth, ransom, and legal tender. In the chaos of late antiquity, the value of pepper took on a new, unsettling weight. In 410 AD, as Rome trembled under siege, the Visigothic king Alaric demanded a ransom not just of gold and silver, but 3,000 pounds of black pepper. The figure surfaces in a medieval chronicle, its accuracy debated, but the demand itself, spice for the fate of a city, captures the world's obsession. For a brief moment, a seed from Kerala's forests stood equal to coin and crown. Even if the number is shadowed by myth, the logic behind it is not. Pepper was durable, portable, and universally desired. It could be hoarded, smuggled, weighed, and counted. In a world where currency was often clipped or debased, a sack of pepper was as good as a chest of gold. The story did not end at the gates of Rome. As Europe staggered through the Middle Ages, pepper became a negotiable currency in daily life. In England, landlords wrote leases that could be paid with a single peppercorn per year. The term peppercorn rent survives in legal language, a faint echo of a time when that tiny berry could buy a day's labor or a year's right to till the soil. Manorial court rolls from the 13th century list tenants owing 1 peppercorn, payable at Michaelmas, and in some cases a pound of pepper was enough to purchase a serf's freedom. A pound, just enough to fill a child's hands, could tip the balance between bondage and liberty. Scarcity drove this strange transformation. The farther pepper traveled from Kerala, the more precious it became. By the time it reached the markets of London or Bruges, the price had multiplied 100-fold. Merchants in medieval London sewed their pockets shut to guard against theft, and the city's ordinances prescribed the death penalty for anyone caught pilfering pepper from the warehouses. The spice's value turned every dock and counting house into a potential crime scene. In the records of the time, pepper is listed alongside gold, silver, and silk, not as a luxury, but as a necessity for those with power. The result was a world where pepper greased the wheels of law, ransomed cities, and set the terms of freedom. Its purchasing power was not a metaphor. It was measured out in lives, in contracts, in the fate of nations. This hunger for pepper would soon drive the search for new trade routes, as empires and merchants alike set their eyes on the source of the world's most coveted seed. The journey from the forests of Kerala to the counting houses of Europe was long, perilous, and astonishingly expensive. By the late Middle Ages, pepper's path was choked by a chain of middlemen, Arab traders ferrying sacks north to Alexandria, Venetian merchants buying up the cargoes, and London dealers waiting at the end of the line. Each hand that touched the spice added another layer of profit until the price soared by as much as 1,000% between the Malabar coast and the markets of Bruges or London. A pound of pepper that cost a handful of coins in Calicut could command the price of a cow in Flanders. Security became an obsession. In 14th century London, city ordinances required pepper merchants to sew their pockets shut, a desperate measure against theft in a world where a few stolen ounces could bankrupt a shop. The penalty for pilfering pepper was death, a law severe enough to appear in the city rolls, though the original parchment has long since vanished. Dockside warehouses became fortresses, and rumors of stolen shipments spread through the merchant class like wildfire. The scale of the markups and the secrecy of the trade bred resentment and suspicion. Marco Polo, writing in the late 13th century, described the Venetian monopoly with a mixture of awe and frustration. In his manuscripts, he called pepper the king of spices, noting that it was worth more than gold in many European cities. Polo's curiosity about its source was shared by a generation of explorers and merchants, all desperate to break the stranglehold that kept pepper locked behind 1,000 tolls and tariffs. By the mid-15th century, the situation was unsustainable. European demand kept rising, but the supply chain was tightly controlled, prices were unpredictable, and fortunes could be lost overnight to a single act of piracy or a failed harvest. The squeeze set off a new kind of ambition, one that would soon send ships around Africa in search of a direct route to the spice's source, and with it, a chance to rewrite the rules of global trade. In July 1498, Vasco da Gama's ships anchored off Calicut, their hulls heavy with Portuguese cannon and royal orders. King Manuel I demanded pepper, the black gold of the Malabar coast, to refill the crown's empty coffers. Within months, the Portuguese had forced local rulers into exclusive contracts, built stone fortresses at Cochin and Calicut, and sent caravels home packed with peppercorns. Lisbon's treasury swelled, and the old chain of Arab and Venetian middlemen snapped almost overnight, but the monopoly would not last. In 1601, Queen Elizabeth's charter for the English East India Company set out a single ruthless aim to secure pepper and other spices by the sword or by the pen. The Dutch FIV-OC followed with fleets and mercenaries, seizing the pepper islands of the Moluccas and enforcing harvest quotas at gunpoint. The VOC ledgers from Batavia record pepper as the company's lifeblood, with forced contracts and blockades shaping the market for a century. The violence of profit spilled far beyond Europe. In 1797, Jonathan Carnes, a Massachusetts captain, slipped out of Sumatra with a clandestine pepper cargo. His shipment returned to Salem with a sevenfold return, an American miracle that turned a handful of peppercorns into a fortune. 4 decades later, the US Navy bombarded the Sumatran village of Kuala Batu after an American pepper shipment vanished, leaving warehouses in ruins and the spice trade stained with blood. Even Napoleon, marching on Moscow, carried pepper in his field stores, convinced it was as vital as powder or coin. By the late 1800s, the tide had turned. Colonial plantations in Sumatra, Brazil, and Vietnam flooded the world market. Vietnam alone now grows more than 30% of the world's pepper, and the price has crashed from kingly ransom to kitchen staple. The same berry that once ransomed cities and bankrolled empires now sits in a plastic grinder, its power spent. The age of pepper as treasure ended not with a bang, but with a glut. In 1621, a peppercorn rent could buy land. In Kuala Batu, American cannon fire answered the price of Sumatran pepper. Today, piperine sits ignored on your table. Its power dissolved as refrigeration tamed rot and value collapsed. But every sprinkle is a shadow of empires stitched into our daily ritual. What do you think endures?